Hey, hello, everybody. Welcome into Off the Post. Uh, Kronovi joining myself alongside for our first post game show. Pretty excited about this, everyone. Originally, this is what I wanted to do, looking back and setting everything up. So now that we're here, it's very exciting, especially after an opening weekend. Some exciting Rocket League happening. I'll throw it to you, Cam. What are your opening thoughts? Obviously, we're gonna start with Phase Finals, Phase Regional Champs. How you feeling if you're
Phase
a FaZe fan right now?
they're just speed running, you know? They decided, okay, it's time for our the first regional of the year. We're just gonna win it because that's what they did last time. I do wonder if
Yep.
this will be consistent with them. They look really good, but obviously they looked really good at the beginning of last season and then kind of tapered off. But I mean, I have to talk about him. First killer, he did everything this weekend. I mean, he looked
He did.
unstoppable, especially in the G2 series.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, he pretty much hard carried that series. It was kind of like a showing off. In the NBA, you have just one of those players where he keeps getting the ball, he drops like 6 points. Kind of felt like that was what First Killer was like in that.
Yeah. Every time he's in rotation, it's like, oh, here we go. It's gonna be a goal again.
Yeah, it also wasn't even if it was like just the goal scoring for him. It was more everything for him. He was able to control the ball. He was setting up his teammates, and of course, he was goal scoring. Fun fact that they were talking about in the broadcast was doesn't happen very often, but the number one goal scorer and the number two scorer were both playing in the grand finals, and two top offenses of the tournament were both playing. So kind of a lack of defense coming out from NA this week, with the two offenses being in the finals, right? Or do you think it was just kind of how it went?
I think this is a very interesting time for North American Rocket League. I know a few shows ago we talked about is NA going to become. I think we had Sizz on for this one. We were talking about how is NA going to become the joke region with everybody moving over. Um, is NA Rocket League going to develop its style and be able to compete internationally? And I think the opposite's kind of happening. I think NA is the most competitive region right now. There's so much competition happening here that only the best teams are going to be performing. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
seeing a massive shift in play style for the teams that are doing well. I think that's why Gen G just suddenly made a grand final. I don't think a lot of people predicted them to be where they were,
Absolutely not.
um,
Yeah.
especially with how they looked in quals. But they they play possession focused. They sort of take the ball from them successfully and actually set anything up. And every time you go for the ball, you just get beat to the side, or you may beat them, but then you get bumped off of it, and the ball just keeps going back to Gen G players, while it keeps going back to phase players over and over. And when you do get your one chance to shoot, it has to be perfect. And that's why
Mhm.
you saw teams like SSG, Optic, V1, like they're just taking shots and they're hitting post, hitting crossbar. They know the pressure is on them to take the perfect shot, and they don't get many opportunities, so they just end up messing it up.
Yeah, it's really difficult with the way FaZe was playing today in order to have consistent offense. Felt like, from what you could see, Genji in particular was just on the back foot the whole. I wonder if the European playstyle combined with an NA playstyle. I always wondered if that was going to be, a formula for success, right? Because not to talk about Gen G a little bit more than FaZe, but when you have the play styles of European players who predominantly, are okay with playing off of pads, as even Crow and I know, and they're comfortable being on low boost. A lot of times, European players would rather stick in the play than go for a big boost. Whereas NA is kind of different, where a lot of times NA players will just favor the big boosts and would rather be comfortable in those scenarios than stay in the play with lower. And I wondered if that kind of inhibited Gen G the finals a little bit because it felt like typical in particular. I mean, I'm sorry, First Killer in particular was just upfield taking boosts a lot of the time. And Gen G would retreat back on defense and be like, "Oh yeah, we have our corner boost. It's not a big deal," and they weren't there, and it just led to a lot of face pressure, specifically from First Killer. And I just felt like Gen G never really had a chance. Like you said, they had to have those tiny windows where they perfected being able to score, and I just felt like they couldn't do it today. It was just something about the phase matchup that was difficult for them, and for me, I thought it was the big.
Yeah, that also led to them getting demoed. I mean, FaZe scored so many goals just open nets, full field by demoing the third man. I mean, first killer's
Yeah.
running around taking boost, staying at top speed all the time. Players think they can rotate back and grab a boost. They get demoed by first, and now Genji, Noli and Chronic look back. They're like, "Oh, Jack, where are you?" And it rolls in. He's
Yeah,
dead.
exactly. And when you're so comfortable with staying in the play as a ones player, sometimes you can just get caught with low pads and not really expect the pace that FaZe play at. And it's not just the pace that they play at, also kind of just like how well they just stick to the ball. It's almost like they have gum and they're just attached. Like every
Right.
time first killer goes up, he'll beat one player, and it's not just the beat; it's also that he follows it for a 50. And then sometimes he'll beat the player and get a 50, and then land after it and do it again.
And then he lands on your boost. Then he bumps your third.
Yeah, exactly.
And at a certain point, Mist can walk in and just like get a free goal. And
Yeah,
that
that's the
kind of
thing, right?
yeah, the phase dynamic now, I think without AJ, I was worried that FaZe just wouldn't have enough offense. But
Mhm.
first is on the ball just a lot more now, it looks like. But these like second supporting person is now Sypical. Sypical is finally not stuck waiting for AJ and first to take all the boost, do something mechanical and hope it works. And if it doesn't work, his job is now clean up and buy time. That's Mist's job now. And Mist made some incredible saves during this regional. But, you know, it may be like new for Mist to be jumping in with this team, but Mist and Sypical have played together before. It was a while ago, but they are familiar with each other,
Long
and all
time
they
ago.
have to do is let first go for the ball, and
Yeah.
it really does showcase just how good I think first killer is. Not that anybody forgot, but he can do like 80 to 90% of a team's offense if you let him. He totally can.
Oh yeah, 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 for sure. Just the amount he can stay on the ball is so impressive, and it just opens up so many lanes. But the thing I wanted to ask is Miss the answer for FaZe everyone's been looking for, because that was the big question mark coming out of the off season. Was FaZe got rid of AJ, Reddles and FaZe were the two big roster moves, I think, Space Station. And FaZe obviously not only dominating this regional, but I think coming out the victor, and it also is Mist looks really good. And as someone who's known Mist a long time, I'm super happy for him, because just he's always been such a talented player, but he hasn't really stacked up the wins that you'd expect a player of his caliber to kind of stack up. And now after some tinkering, finds himself on this FaZe roster. They come in after a questionable off season, and people questioning the roster, questioning results. Boom! Instantly, first regional, FaZe pull out the win, and not only did they win, it was in dominant fashion.
Yeah, it
They
was
did
it was
have a slip up
4-2,
in the Swiss,
4-1,
right?
4-1. That was it. Yeah, they lost in Swiss
G2, I think.
to G2, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 1-3. But then they clapped them right back in semis 4-1. And that was literally just first killer deciding, okay, we're not going to repeat Swiss. I'm just going to score 8 double touches.
Yeah, I think also, um, without focusing on Mist more than the guy he replaced in AJ. I think Mist, in terms of playstyle, for those wondering, comparatively to AJ, is way more defensive, way more patient, and less I'm gonna put it on you and see what you can do. AJ kind of takes the ball and just brings it towards you with all kind of threat. You're like, oh, what's he gonna do? All this stuff, and then he kind of goes all in a lot. I feel like Mist, a lot of the time, he's way more patient. He's able to read the play. He thinks steps ahead, more defensively minded. I think like if he's given an option of aggressive or passive, he chooses the passive one. And when you combo that with Sypical, who's also of similar play style, I think you just have a lot of midfield control. Like the old NRG roster used to have, Cam. You know how played NRG, it was really difficult to just break out of defense. I think FaZe kind of took that and are now applying it to, like,
Yeah,
yeah.
everyone on that team looks like they know what their job is, I guess, and nobody's really going too all in. First killer's allowed to go all in if he wants, but honestly, his recoveries are very good and his boost management's very good, so he's never really out of the play too long. And I think the biggest step up for me on that team on phase is Sipical's like awareness and how comfortable he looks now. Because before he was always it always kind of looked like he was the one making the bad touches that led to goals against FaZe when he was with AJ in First Killer. But now he's not confused. I think Mist understands not to be like crowding Sipical space, and Sipical knows when First is done with the ball. So Sipical has
Yeah.
full 100% confidence to make the plays he wants to make. And I mean, he scored quite a few nice goals, quite a few mechanical goals this weekend. Not just First Killer popping off, but Typical really put in some work on the offense.
Yeah, Sipical looks completely different. He looks like the old Sip that I know and love. Just like this guy that's just always on the ball, he's always in the play. He had the thing about Sipical that makes him so difficult to play against is his decision making. Always seems to let you make one more touch, and you're like, oh, this guy's just letting me on the ball. But when he allows you to make the touch, it's for his favor. And he seems a lot more confident. I mean, did you see the? You had to have seen the shot that he hit this weekend. He like went up, hit it off the corner wall, landed on the ceiling, jumped off the ceiling, slammed it into the net 100 miles an hour. That was one of the best goals I've seen in a long time, and it was typical doing it. Really not the player you pick typically.
Yeah, you'd pick someone else every single
Yeah.
time,
But he
starting with
has
an
the
F and ending in.
capabilities. They all do. And that's what's very scary about this. I didn't think it would click this fast. Because FaZe all of last year, right, Cam? We talked about this team that was just a monster that could just go in and win world championships. And it was just the team that never was, right? Like they kept getting fourth, regional finals, all that stuff. Then you come in the roster change, it's controversial. Missed a player that's had mixed results. You put all that together, they come in, they just dominate. And for me, is Miss the answer? So far, you have to say, yeah, he is the answer,
I mean, I'm
right?
not really surprised that they immediately start performing better. My thing with FaZe is always that after a roster move, um, I mean, and this is definitely like a First Killer thing. Right after a roster move, his team does better. The question is, how long will that team continue to do well? Because it's over time where results
Yeah.
start to wane a little bit, and that bond between players of trust gets stressed, and it starts to bend. And this kind of happened last season with FaZe. They got rid of Illusion for AJ, even though they had been doing just fine with Illusion. That
Mm.
trust bond and that synergy on the pitch started to bend and bend and bend until it eventually broke. And FaZe just were never the same team they were at the very beginning of the season. So that is the ultimate challenge for FaZe,
Sure.
I think. And they've set themselves up for great success. They've proven how good they can be, but they need to focus on longevity. They need to decide, okay, just because we have one bad event or even one bad major, we're not going to be on each other about it. Just go back to what worked. Trust that that's how
Sure.
good you can be.
Yeah, I agree with those points. And chat only Ray saying, yeah, FaZe won regional one last season. I mean, that is true. That is true. I do think though that this is somewhat of a different beast. Because it's Mist we're talking about. And I know that, one player isn't that big of an impact. Or maybe making too big out of it. I don't think so. I think Mist for me, I'm really excited for First Killer and the boys because it feels like a lot of teams go with this formula of two aggressive players, one defense. And not that Mist and Typical are both defensive players, but I would categorize them as all around players. And I really want a roster of two all around players plus one like Psycho. I'm gonna call First Killer a Psycho.
I
He's
mean,
like
yeah, you can't stop him from doing what he wants to do with the ball. He's like
yeah,
inhuman mechanical skill. It's crazy. I
and he
mean,
plays
James
so
Bot
much
on
better now.
broadcast literally like made a not a metaphor, but compared First's ability to like borderline cheating. Like First Killer's a
It
cheat code. Like
is.
we should check this guy's PC. I think he was talking about it during the G2 game or something, but it was hilarious because James was totally right. Like the kid is inhumanly good.
He is. It's shocking to watch because watch pros from other matches or like I was watching Oxygen this weekend. I think they're an amazing team. That's Europe for now. talking about NA right
Yeah,
now.
we'll get to that. We'll
Yeah,
get to that.
NA right now. I think first killer. He just amazes me because of it's not just the fact of his control. It's how many times he can get to the ball with 100 boost. He does it more than anyone else, and it's really difficult to explain to people who aren't a pro. But just like 100 boost isn't a lot when you're on the ball, and he makes it seem like a ton. Like he stretches that 100 boost farther than anyone. And when you have someone like that who is comboed with two players who I think read the game better than anyone in North America and missed, like if you were to say maybe Karma, or I'll ask you the question, Kronovi,
Hmm.
who are if you had to pick three of the best all around like better defenders, I would say shading toward defenders, but more all around midfielder defenders, who are the top three in NA? Because
Like, hmm.
I'll finish the point after you.
Yeah. So this is people who aren't necessarily those goal line saviors, but they're the people that are able to like lock down midfield and control the ball and keep the ball safe and then get the ball back in the play.
Yeah, just like I would say, who are the best controllers of the game in North America?
Mm.
Like players, I mean, like an example would be, I would say Torment would be right.
You
He
see, I don't
controls
think
the
he
game.
would. I
No, you
think
don't think he's up there?
I think he has incredibly strong challenges. Like he was a brick wall in their one series. Like I'm pretty sure he didn't lose a 50, but he's not on the ball enough to be controlling possession 24/7. It's just not his job on that team, and it's not his play style. He makes touches and shuts down momentum from the other team to then hand it off to someone to pick up said momentum shift.
Okay,
Um
cool.
I think players that are better at just constantly controlling things, normally like Daniel. I think Daniel is just he's impossible to get him off the ball, like to get rid of him.
Daniel's
Um,
crazy. He's first killer junior.
yeah, and then obviously I'd have to put First in there as well because he's permanently on the ball. I think AJ is actually a great shot. When AJ is playing super well, he permanently is going for the ball, but he's prepared for everything you're going to challenge him with. So like every 50 goes his way. Um, every challenge he manages to land on boost and keep the ball. I think
Okay, so
Optic
let
is
me
still just
rephrase the
struggling a little bit.
question. I don't think I phrased it properly.
Hmm.
Who are the top three? I would say midfield slash defensive players in NA. Right, I'm talking about like mist style players. My point is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. If you were to
Hmm.
name the three best defensive players in NA, I think it's Torment, Mist, Typical. And two of the three players are on one team, right? Got them on phase. And then to boot, you have First Killer, who's a cheat code. Literally, like he looks like he's hacking. And when you have players like that, this was the hype that I had for phase last season. This was this team that I thought we were last season. Um, and it started out the same way, right? Okay, so chat pointed out to me, Karma, calm down. They won Regional 1 last season. It happened already. But to me, this is different a little bit. It was the way they won. It was how they looked when they played. It was Gen G on the back foot 24/7 of that final series. Lucky to even bring a game out. It was them, how they looked in Swiss. Yeah, they dropped to G2, but it was dominant the entire weekend for FaZe this week. And to
I
me,
I
I
don't
just
think
want to
FaZe are
say it.
invulnerable.
Mist is the answer for me right now. I'm my
Maybe.
phase up. I don't know how to do it. I
You
think
can't
it's
you literally can't
I
say
can't
phase
do
up and
it.
not be able to do the thing. You give your best
Give
phase
me a
up. Is that
sec. I'll
it?
figure it out. Give me a sec.
You need to here. I'll make my point. You need to go on Google Images and look up how to do phase up, okay? But
Yeah, how do you
I think that
phase up?
Mist might be the answer. Might. We'll have to see. I want to see more than one split of phase doing well to really fully believe in them, just because of their entire history last season.
I'm on the train, baby. True,
I
true. The,
also
the train is leaving the station, Cam. I am on it. Mist is the answer. I'm all for
I think
it.
FaZe also are very susceptible to just having a team bump them like crazy. Nobody tried to get physical with FaZe. I think
That's true.
teams were so focused on what are we doing for this first regional that they didn't realize half of beating FaZe is just shutting them down. You don't even have to play that well. You can just mess them up, and then they'll get tilted or something like that because they're so focused on doing everything perfectly that the moment you throw a wrench into the plans, it's almost like I think feel like sometimes FaZe plays down to their opponent occasionally, and you can definitely leverage
Okay.
that, and teams just did not leverage that at all. And that might happen as time goes on, especially now that everybody is going to be looking at FaZe going, this is the team to beat. We need to
They
prepare
are,
for them
right?
now. Yeah,
They
they
are
have a
the team
massive
to beat.
target on their back now.
Yeah, 100%. Targets on the back. They announced themselves. They're like, we're FaZe. We're here. We won the regional. We beat the EU wannabes, the NA players. Get them out. Second place.
Send them
They
back
can
to
be happy
Europe.
with that. Yeah, yeah. Sent them packing back. Chronic as well. I mean, I thought it. Speaking of Gen G, because we have talked about real quick before we finish the first. The FaZe talk. I want to switch the
Hmm.
topic. I had is missed the answer. Now I want to talk about how good of a coach is Roldis. And something I want to harp on a little bit about is let's go all the way back to when they signed him. Okay? So they were they were struggling all last season. Everyone knows FaZe. They've been touted as world champions or bust, which is fair. That's how much talent they have. I think that's a bit high of a critique, but I'll say it's fair. So they picked up Roldis heading into the World Championships after struggling all year. Cam, do you think they did better at Worlds with after they picked up Roldis as compared to the year?
I mean, Worlds didn't really feel like there was enough time for Oldest to make any differences. They
Okay.
still look the same as they always had against G2 on stage on that last day. But I think now that Roldest has had more time, that he's really fit in well and brought not only a good mind for the game and strategy, but also a great environment, a great personality, somebody
For
to
sure.
break those silences, keep people focused, a sense of authority on the team, like someone to look up to. I think Roldiz is like the perfect fit for FaZe. And that's why they bounced back against G2. They lost to them in Swiss, but FaZe came back in the semifinal absolutely swinging. And I think that may or may not happen, without Roldiz being there. So I think it is quite the roll diff. Not
Roll
gonna
diff.
lie, the roll diff. Yeah.
I'm gonna bring up the bracket for us here just to talk about it a little bit, chat. Switch up things a little because I know it's a little bit of a soft stream today. I'm trying to work with the graphics. But for me, I think Roldiz was it I was doubting him at first. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, okay, Roldiz he just stopped being a player, instantly going to transition into a coach. How is it gonna look? I think it would be really difficult for me personally as a player to just instantly roll. And I did have my doubts. Of course, not with his personality. I mean, I think
I mean, he's done it before though.
he has. That's true. Um, but I don't know. He was I thought that the analyst stuff that he was providing was really good. And to switch over from an analyst to a coaching role is definitely a change, especially when you're not just joining any roster, you're joining FaZe, which I feel like FaZe brings a lot of pressure.
Of course.
I thought they did look better in that World Championship. I know there wasn't much time, but it felt like it was a little different from the regionals that they played. Now they have so much talent that you can argue it didn't look different, but I feel like now throughout the off season, I think that just Roldis has been a really good ad for. I think since he's been added to that roster after calling for a coach all of last season, specifically from me, I'm big on coaching. To see Roldis step into those shoes and everything, I thought was fantastic. I think he's looked really good. I think that FaZe has looked really strong, and I just want to give a shout out to Roldis. I think that he's done a really good job coaching. I think his personality seems to be meshing well. I don't know if you caught it, but when they did the timeout,
The
the whole
timeout,
FaZe
yes. I
Clan's
really
team
wanted
was
to talk about
sleeping.
that. That
Yeah, the
was
whole
great.
FaZe Clan team was sleeping. I think that that's um a good sign for things. I think he's bringing a little bit of fun. I saw First Killer smiling, laughing.
Yeah, to do that in the grand final, to really have the energy up there.
Yeah, and also Sypical, because I was a little worried. Sypical hit that insane shot, and instantly I look at the player cam, and he's stoic. It's like he's made of stone, and he scores like I would be freaking out if I hit that in RLCS. Sypical's like they don't even First Killer didn't react. It's like, oh, okay, they're focused. But then in the finals, they're winning. It's a totally different team. They're sleeping on the cameras. They're confident. Cam, they're having a good time. I thought that change in dynamic from FaZe being stoic in the semis to the finals where they looked like they were smiling confident was a big thing. And I just credit that to Roll.
Yeah,
I
and that really helps them in the long run, to have those like
yeah.
really good moments, or to have someone who, even if like let's say they're losing that grand final, they can still have a little bit of fun.
Mhm.
It's not like where it gets so serious where people like communication breaks down and trust breaks down. So Mist could be the final puzzle piece, and maybe Roldiz is the one to keep these puzzle pieces interlocked for the whole season. But they need more results for me to hop on the phase train. I'm not phasing
That's
up
fair.
until they win like two regionals or like
I'm not
maybe
phasing up.
maybe a major. Then I might phase up. But for now, I sleep just like they did in the timeout. I sleep.
All right, Cam still needs to be on the train. I'm all aboard. I'm excited. Um, and speaking of phase, I think we're gonna switch topics a little bit now. We have talked about phase. Congratulations to them on their win. They were fantastic. Uh, what should we talk about now, kid? Do we want to talk about the AJ
I
move and talk a little bit about that and the impact, or should we focus on
I
a
wanted
different?
to cover the other side of the grand final actually with Gen G.
Okay.
Specifically, I wanted to talk about Chronic a little bit because this is his first ever grand final. For people that have been following North America for a while, Chronic isn't really necessarily a household name in threes. He played a lot of like 1v1s. I would say not like back in the day, but a while ago. And he was doing lots of open qual runs during like this was like RLCS X time, I think, was when Chronic the last time he was pushing up in like notability.
Yeah.
And then out of nowhere, to me anyway, out of nowhere, he's playing with Jack and Noli. And he's in a grand final on the RLCS broadcast. And I think this is just a meteoric rise for Chronic. And I think it's been a long time coming for him. He's always been a talented player, especially in like 1v1s. His skill is very apparent. But for him to really fit in well with Noli and Jack and he has a presence on that team. Multiple times he's MVP, and I'm pretty sure, because we have that fantasy league going, I'm pretty sure he accrued more fantasy points than Jack. So I
I
think,
wouldn't doubt it. I think
yeah, he did.
he's got really great goal line capabilities. I know from playing twos with him where I just like I mess up and it's just we're getting scored on and Chronic just comes out of nowhere, makes it. Um, Also, chat if you want to call in and voice your opinion with us. Um, Maybe add in an opinion of your own for us to talk about. Feel free to join our Discord. It's in the chat. Hop in the live voice channel, and we'll drag you guys up so you can join in on the conversation with us for a little bit. So feel free to do that if you want. But as far as like Chronic, for sure, I agree. I think Chronic is deserving of an opportunity. I'm someone who has been in favor of picking up unproven, I would say, unproven players with potential. That's just something we always did on the Splice roster.
Yeah, just give
Um,
them a shot.
yeah, so I'm a big fan of you know giving players potential. I think Chronic's a perfect player to take a chance on. And I do think he will grow over time. I do think Gen G struggled today with FaZe in particular. I don't think that they struggled earlier. It felt like kind of the apparently Jack show, which like
Yeah, Jack was hitting every single ball. I remember yesterday during the semifinals, there was a time where I was kind of just like live commentating in my head. And I kept saying, and Jack cuts for the ball with no boost. He cuts for the ball. Oh, Jack's going again. Oh, he hits it again. Oh, he
yes.
50s it. Oh, he's still going. And then he was cutting off literally everybody. I swear Jack was trying to free train yesterday in a threes game.
Yeah, like 100%. And that was kind of what led me to the point of the boost management because of a point you're making. I noticed the same thing. And I was just curious. how that play style would match up in North America, because it's something I've just always wondered on. And in LAN, it's not as hard. I mean, it's not as easy to be like, oh, that's a factor. Online, though, they were in boot camp. That was their first regional together. They're a new team. Thought that they overperformed in terms of Gen G. I didn't expect them to come in and with as limited practice as they had, um, make second place. You guys have to keep in mind this team didn't form until what, like 2 weeks before the season began. They were
Yeah,
waiting
they've
on
been
contract negotiation.
like having to move all that. Like
Yeah,
Jack and Only been in North America for like 2.5, maybe 3 weeks
yeah,
tops.
extremely impressive to come in second for me. They're playing out of Toronto, stuff like that. I thought
So is this just a peak, or will they continue to prove to be like a top 4, top 2 team in North America?
I'm somewhat biased. I hold EU
Oh,
players to a higher standard. I think that they'll be back. I honestly think that I've been a big fan of Jack for a while, more as a content creator than a player. I didn't really. I mean, obviously he's extremely talented, but for me, I just fell in love with like his ones videos and stuff like that. In terms of threes play, I have to admit I'm somewhat uneducated on him. But after this weekend, I mean, I think it's impossible to say common three. It's like the way that he is able to find angles for things is really weird, or like how he's just always on the. I
yeah,
just
it's the possession oriented gameplay. I mean, when you have once players like Chronic and Jack combined with, Noli, who's like that mechanical, he can hit the peak shots. I actually thought Noli was the one who was having the hardest time figuring out
I agree
what
with
he
that.
should be doing on that team, and I think it's why on defense, FaZe were just smothering them because Genji couldn't get out. They couldn't get the ball to Noli from to do something. Noli couldn't get the ball to Jack, to Chronic. It was always like Chronic and Noli stacked in net. They make a bad touch, it's over. So
Yeah,
the possession oriented gameplay from Chronic and Jack is really, I think, the correct way that the Rocket League meta is going, because we're seeing it with SSG, with Daniel and LJ just constantly having possession first, and Cypical constantly holding possession. And as long as your pace is quick enough and you can manage boost, you have options. The
yeah,
more possession you hold as a team, the more options you get over time in a game, and the more shots you will get to take. And you can get creative with those too, as long as you have possession, instead of having to take your 1 in 10 shot that the other team allowed because they messed up and
right.
hoping
It's
that it
how
sticks.
exactly you create possession thing is how many opportunities you create in the time you have, which obviously more time you have the ball and the more time you have first killer on your team, you can have a shot like every 30 seconds, pretty much.
Right.
Uh,
So I think Jack just sometimes was holding on to possession a little too long, or didn't realize that like it was time for him to give possession to his teammate. And it was also just hard to beat FaZe on some of these challenges. Like they were just stealing possession quite often. So I think Genji do have a little bit to figure out if they want to have a similar performance next regional. But the building blocks are there, but they really need to perform better, I think, if they want to place in the grand final again. Because so there
yeah.
were definitely cracks there, and they definitely showed.
Yeah,
I'm
I
surprised the
have to
Space Station game
admit.
was so one-sided though.
Yeah, I was about to say, the Space Station series really shocked me because when I was really focused on the grand finals today. It just felt like Genji really struggled to keep possession against a team like FaZe, where all three players were able to make multiple touches and were comfortable on low boost. You flip that, and I know I've mentioned a bunch of times, but Genji seemed like they were not comfortable on low boost, especially on defense against FaZe. And when you take that and you apply that to the space station matchup, I was very surprised to see it go opposite in Gen G 4-1. LJ held to 0 goals, 0 assists, which is something that
Not looking good for my
sorry, not
fantasy right
zero
now.
assists, not zero
Oh.
assists, 0 goals for which in 5 games of a semifinals, if you're holding LJ to 0 goals, obviously you're going to be doing great things. So for Gen G, I think the move to NA, total success for them, right? I think that they have to be brimming with confidence after their performance, which I'm sure they're happy with. But the finals performance, I will say, it did scare me a bit, Gen G. It felt like they were completely outmatched. It
Yeah, they had
wasn't
no answers.
even in the 4-1, that one game, I realized that they ended up taking it, but for the most part, it was them just scoring a counterattack. And I realize it speaks to their defense. Yes, they held FaZe off the entire time, but nowadays you can't really just play defense. There's a lot of things that are factors in scoring goals, possession, all that stuff. And I feel like just the way that FaZe was controlling that matchup, Gen G are gonna.
Yeah,
But
teams
but
just don't overcommit as much as they used to. Like they know they don't have to
yeah,
go all in. They'll score eventually once they get enough boost.
yeah, exactly. So for Gen G, I think that they're extremely proud of the second place finish as they should be.
Oh, they should
Moving
be super
moving here to
happy.
NA and for putting up a result like that is an extreme W. Especially after all their, hopefully I'm not leaking anything. It was a long process. The contract situation, I think Jack touched on it a bit publicly. But it wasn't an immediate thing. Them being able to come here and scrim and stuff, and chronic on high ping. I've scrimmed from EU to NA. It's not fun. I've also scrimmed from NA to EU. Also not fun. The ping is
Yeah,
terrible.
no. That's like 90,
So
110 ping
yeah.
on a good day.
So for Gen G, I think all around it's a win, even though they lost. FaZe, I think showed though they're the team to beat right now. But going
For
back and
now, we'll
for
see.
now, working our way backwards in the bracket, I'm gonna go ahead and screen share it for you all again. I wanted to talk about who got replaced on Fate, and maybe talk about AJ a little bit. Cam, talking about the Optic performance.
Yeah, that Optic Space Station
What do
game
you think
was a
about
bit rough
Optic this
for
this
Optic.
weekend?
I thought
In
Optic
total, not just AJ.
I mean Optic looked good. You can tell they have a bit of synergy. I think Magic Bear still has a lot to prove. He makes small little tiny lapses in judgment, and that half a second of making no decision, like, just gets them scored on sometimes. Like someone's staring
Yeah.
down Magic Bear. Magic Bear's like, I'm driving, woo. Oh hey, a ball. And before he can decide what he wants to do with it, someone just shoots it over his head, or like just shoots it past him, or wins the 50 on him. And it's like Magic Bear sometimes falls asleep at the wheel, but when he's on the ball, he's incredibly good. So I think Optic needs to focus on being just a little more consistent with their challenges, but they have a ton of potential. And that Space Station series in the quarterfinal, honestly, Space Station were on another level. Space Station probably wanted to win that match so
Yeah.
badly. Arsenal's camera, every time Space Station scored, he was screaming, popping off. It was like watching a ranked
Was.
stream of his. He was just nonstop energetic every time Space Station was winning. And Optic could not score anything. They were hitting posts, crossbars, other players. Space Station, any shot that was actually in was getting saved. Every pass, no matter how good, AJ could hit a double flip reset pass to mid, and Arsenal would come sweeping in and stop the shot, or Daniel would come in and block the pass. Space Station just read everything about Optic, and maybe Space Station are the Optic kryptonite. Honestly, it kind of
Yeah,
looked like that to
could
me,
be.
because then Space Station didn't know what to do against Gen G.
Yeah, but it could also be like we're Optic lucky to be there. I mean, I don't mean
Nah, I
to
don't think
say
so. I
that
think Optic are a top 8 team.
like that, but did you see the complexity series? I mean, that I I give credit to Optic for winning the series, but Cole shouldn't have lost. I'm gonna be real. In my opinion, I don't think Complexity should have lost that series in any way. Especially with the way it ended, I felt for Complexity real bad. I don't know if it was the nerves or whatever. Optic, they had all the momentum. They were doing the reverse sweep thing. They were putting in, great saves. Like Cole was putting on pressure, and Optic had great defense. Um, and I thought that were Optic lucky to be there? I don't think so. I think they earned it. But
I mean, they had to go to 9-minute OT with Complexity
there was that
in game
in the way it
4.
ended too. Cole bumped each other
Mm-hmm.
and left an empty net after tons of pressure the whole game. Like they should have won game 5. They should have scored. They didn't, and it should have is a big word. But when you take that into consideration, and then Optic come into the space station, after struggling against Cole, I wasn't surprised that Space was dominant. But I'm not on the same camp as you. I don't think Optic are a top 8. What do you think makes Optic a top 8?
I
Other than the
mean,
fact that they came in top 8 for the first
well,
regional.
the other thing is OSI Space Station was so one-sided against Over Optic because there was the 0-second goal by Daniel in game 1. They ended up losing that game. Optic were supposed to start the series with momentum and got it totally ripped from them by Daniel's 0-second heroics. But Optic they have 3 very strong players, and it kind of fits. I guess the way is it's like Magic Bear and AJ constantly on the ball, Reddles supporting. Um, you can basically send Magic Bear to a ball or send AJ to a ball. Either way, they should do fine. I think there's a ton of mechanical potential. They just have to. They have a few rough edges. I think Magic Bear's potential is
That's a good way to
been
put it.
slept on for a very, very long time in the scene in North America. I think he's a very, very good player, but he's the one that needs to be the most consistent one on the team for Optic to do well. I also think Optic would have actually placed better. Their shooting was off this whole week. Like just lots of shots that needed to go in that would hit post,
Yeah.
open nets that, like there's a defender, but the whole left side of the net's open. They just have to place it correctly. And players of this caliber always do, except this
Usually.
weekend. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
I
think
think so.
they play the right way. They just didn't execute very well this week, and I'm expecting them to execute better next regional.
Yeah, I think they're also under the same thing of a lot of pressure. Yeah, the vibes are all good because you're on Optic. But, things are sort of get a little bit too excited, maybe, and then you start to feel it a bit with roster move. You're in Texas, you're out of your element, right? They were boot camping, which is great. I think there is a boot camp buff, so I'm not saying that the negative, but I'm just saying it's different. Um,
I don't know
with
if anyone gets to make excuses on, things being different with your team when Gen G move
Yeah,
entire
that's true.
countries and
And
dominate, you
Furia,
know? You're right,
yeah,
exactly. Well, Fury didn't really do that well though.
no, but like more on the Optic thing. I don't know if you guys mentioned Magic Bear, and I don't know if it's Magic Bear or is it AJ. And and I'm not saying that it's either one of them. It could be a team. I I just I'm a big AJ fan. I love AJ. I just I worry a bit about the cohesiveness of the rosters he's on simply because of his style. Similar to First Killer as well, that has had that question mark, right, which is like, can their playstyle work at a high level in threes because of how much it requires. The word I'm looking for, I mean, consistency, I guess, is the word, but like when you're as good as AJ and you can go to every ball all the time, like I feel like it's kind of difficult, for decision make like lines of decision making as a team when you have someone. So I just wonder, is Magic Bear getting caught up in all that? Is it hard to play with players who are up a level to what he's used to? Not to be
Yeah.
rude to Magic Bear, but he has been perpetually like outside the top 10. Now you're coming into a team with 2 players who are top 4, right? And you're being shoved into this top 4 play style, and it might just be too much for him right now. And
Yeah.
not really like a play style type of thing, Cam, but more like just an environment situation, kind of getting accustomed to the pressure, the speed of play at that level in those situations. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, and I agree with you on a lot of that. And my question for Optic, and I guess hopefully the players are looking at it this way, is with Reddles and AJ, is Magic Bear the one gluing them together? Or is Reddles gluing AJ and Magic Bear together to connect, right? Like, who is that
I
one
think Magic
that
Bear's trying to
will
glue.
allow things to work, right? And I don't know if Magic Bear is the type of player that is that cohesive, bring everyone together, be that middle ground where he doesn't get to do 100% of
Mhm.
everything he wants, but he does everything he needs to do, right? I feel like that's more of like a Reddles thing, and that's kind of what he was before when he was on SSG. He was the glue between Daniel and Arsenal. So
Yeah.
I really wonder what Optic, what the players are going to do and what their thought process is for play style, or at least focusing on which players need to do what.
Yeah, I
Because
think it's an
yeah,
interesting question. Um And someone in chat, Big Left says, "Is it sad to say, but does anyone think Reynolds is steps though?" That kind of, I'm going to piggyback off that point because that was kind of something I was going to answer with your question, which is Reynolds was the glue to Daniel and I, right? Or that was the game plan. But with the way that Reynolds and AJ plays too, right? Twos, right? Reynolds seems to assume this type of support play style. Get AJ the ball. I'll do my own thing, but mainly I just get AJ. And I wonder if Magic Bear isn't, I don't know, quite consistent enough mechanically to be able to assume the pressure that requires like that type of play style. Of course he has the mechanics. Of course he has all that stuff. It's just, I wonder if the combo of AJ and Magic Bear is enough to elevate this team to where they want to be. Top 8 for sure. I think,
I think
if you're
in
asking
time
me,
they can be top
is
4.
Optic going to be a top 8 team? Yes. I think Optic is borderline top 8 right now. I would put I can't put Complexity ahead of them anymore. After this weekend, I have to concede the point.
No, Complexity need time.
Yeah, it's clear that Cole weren't there yet. But I do think that roster's great. And I thought that they should have beat Optic in that scenario. They didn't. They pulled a bit of a...
I mean, that game 4, I remember watching it, the 9-minute overtime between Complexity and Optic. That was like the longest stretch of Rocket League where I watched good plays happen, but all of it
No one
amount to
score.
nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like
I felt
it was
the same
nothing but
way.
trading possession over and over, and nobody wants to make a
Oh, it
mistake.
was so annoying.
It was honestly, I almost fell asleep, but at the same time, you're watching it like, wow, everything they're doing is so good, but like, I don't care.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like, dude, you have a 1v1. Go for a bump, go for something. It was like,
Yeah,
low
like
50.
make the winning play. Don't just make the safe play.
And it was like almost anytime someone got on the ball, I'm like, oh, did they have boost? No, they're low 50ing it. Like, he has nothing. It's just like, I feel for Cole because they're another team, which is cool that we even get to have this conversation. But
oh yeah,
that
North
another
American Rocket
team
League
that
is so
moved.
nice right now.
Yeah, another player that moved across the country. And it's just hard to put into perspective, how seriously can you take this regional when you have 3, 4 teams moving across oceans?
Yeah, still adjusting.
Furia, CRR, Gen G. Is there another one in there? I don't think so. So you have three of the top 8 teams. Or no, 2 out of the 3 in the top 8. Cole being the only one, and they lost on a reverse sweep. Not only a reverse sweep, but a 10-minute overtime and then a game 5 overtime of like...
They were winning before going into
Yeah,
OT.
and they were winning. So...
And they dropped a game to Seoul in Swiss. It was Seoul's only win too.
I think Optic are definitely top 8 right now. Are there any teams, Cam, for you that are top 8 that didn't make top 8 this
teams that were top 8 but like should have, that didn't but should be top 8?
Yeah, teams that you're surprised didn't make top 8.
Not really. Complexity was really the one. Like, you could trade out Complexity for Optic, I feel like, or maybe Complexity for Shopify. I think Shopify really impressed this weekend. That's Memory Parth 2-piece. But they went 3-1 through Swiss, only losing to Space Station.
Here we go. I got that. Look at that. Look at the graphics. Look at this production switching.
Yeah, I mean, Shopify did really, really well, and I don't think anybody gave them, like, rated them or gave them credit beforehand for how good they could be. So, I know I definitely underrated them as well. And they gave FaZe the biggest trouble during playoffs. They took 2 games off FaZe instead of the 1 from G2 and Gen G.
Yeah, and I think for me the only team maybe is that Complexity team. I want to say NRG too.
I don't think you can put Energy in the top 8. That's a whole nother discussion. They should not be losing that Dignitas game. If they don't lose that, they're fine.
Yeah, there's one team on here, Cam, that we haven't really talked about yet. And they're a big mover since we're talking about moving countries, and that's Furia. We're gonna get into the Furia discussion a little bit. One of my favorite teams, the homies down there from Sam. what do you think of the Furia performance this week? I'll leave it open ended for you. Did they make a
Hmm.
mistake coming here to NA? Is it too early to
Mm,
say? I mean, we're making bold claims here, but I'm just gonna frame it to you that way. Did Furia make a mistake coming to NA?
I think there were a lot of bold fans saying that Furia was gonna come over to North America and just dominate like it was a free region. Um, except a bunch of other people did it as well. Furia definitely looked like they were still adjusting to being in North America. They just did not look like they had the same venom that they normally do at these international events. But to be fair, normally when you see Furia play North America teams, that's at majors, the most hype event on LAN, on the stage. That's where these players shine the best. So in online play, I think Furia just isn't going to look as good as they do on LAN. I think Furia are so much an in-person, like they get the hype from the crowd. They
Oh yeah.
don't really have a lot of nerves on that stage, but that doesn't help you a whole lot in online play. So
How much
I'm
is it?
actually worried they might not even qualify for a major with how much competition there is.
How much of a factor for you is um not knowing or not scrimming teams often and then playing them? So like, what I'm trying to say is, how much of a factor do you think Furia being from Brazil is before they move to? Meaning, they don't scrim against NA teams all the time. They're not playing you very often. Meet them in majors, right, as a team, and you're like, okay, we know what they're gonna do, but you don't play against them, right? So you don't know exactly what they're gonna do. You have an idea, but then when you go out and execute it, it needs to be almost automatic, which is why scrims are so important to the scene.
Mhm.
Because you create these automatic reactions to how a team plays, and then it becomes like a game within a game, right? But
Yeah, well,
Furia,
Furia would they would still lose in their own region to other teams, you
right?
know? Like they weren't immune to losses. People knew what to do against Furia in their own region. So
But
I
there's
think
more
you're
the
right.
major performances, right? Like Furia in majors, top four most of the time, right? That was their major advantage. But now when you move to North America, pure Rocket League, take all the other factors aside. Pure Rocket League decision. Was it a mistake? You know, are they costing themselves major spots? Are they costing themselves financially? Yeah, you get a contract bonus, but potentially you're not as
Oh, I mean, they're definitely making more than I think being
yes.
in North America is a positive move
Hope so.
money-wise, profit-wise for them. Otherwise, they I don't see why they would, if it wasn't going to, be profitable for them. But they are allowing teams to like download them and get more familiar with them. And it's a lot harder to qualify for a major in North America than it is in SAM for Furia. Furia were basically
Yeah.
always going to make the major in SAM, and now they're not guaranteed that. So if they don't come out swinging and maintain like a bare minimum level of hunger to improve while they're in North America, it's just going to be like what happened with Complexity, where they barely sneak in off of a tiebreaker with SSG to go to a major, and we never see him again.
Yep. I yeah, it's a good. I mean,
And that would be a shame to not see Fury at majors on land because they
oh,
would dominate.
total loss. Yeah, no, total loss if Furia doesn't make. How many spots does that they have? 5.
North America gets yes, it's 5-5.
So phase is 1, so that spot is taken. So now there's only 4 out
I don't
of.
know if FaZe will even be the one seed. I need
Well,
to
no,
see
but
the regional too.
they make a spot by winning a regional, right? Isn't that automatic?
Oh, is
That's
that,
more what I mean.
that might be on me for understanding some of these fine print rules that got added in.
No, you could be right. I'm just saying point wise. I'm assuming if you win one, you pretty much make.
Oh, yeah, because there's no way FaZe like fail to
Right,
qualify.
because I think you get invited back next week, and then the third one is for
Yeah.
teams that only made it to the first 2. So I'm assuming that Phase Auto makes. Yeah,
Yeah, that's kind of the benefit of the format now is teams are going to start building this snowball. Because
exactly.
for the third regional, if you weren't doing well in regional 1 and 2, you're just not going to be there. You just don't even get the chance
Yeah,
for points at the major.
and I don't. I will say this is a bit uneducated on my part. I don't know the point spread, so I'll find that out for you guys for next time. But in the event that there's more points in the third regional because it's an invite and you have to make the first 2, then teams could technically make up ground, like teams like Furia could make up grounds after not performing. I do think that them making top 8 was not a sure thing for Furia, and that they did make top 8 was huge for them. If we take a look back real quick, producer Karma is going to switch.
I mean, they played a super close set with NRG. Like the teams they
They
beat to get
did.
into top 8 were Complexity, who were looking shaky, Accelerate, and NRG, with convincing losses to Space Station and Optic. You know, it just
Yeah.
they were not looking like the dominant Furia we know. They were looking like the Furia treading water.
Yeah, they dodged. I mean, arguably any top 8 team they got, they
All the teams
lost,
they
right?
beat didn't make top 8. You know.
Right. So they kind of were the gatekeeper in that fashion. I also didn't really. Oh, sorry, chat. Actually, this isn't bad. The try cam. How does it look on
Yeah,
the
it
screen?
was okay.
Okay, this doesn't look this. I don't really know how to take them against NRG. I thought
Well,
NRG looked weird this week, so that win in Game 5
yeah.
against NRG, I didn't think Furia looked too. Um, and I was a bit worried because it does seem kind of like the Jan show a lot of the time, where it relies so heavily on him going up and finishing almost this play that Furia creates. It's almost like Furia creates an opportunity for Jan with 100 boost to get a 2-on-1, and he usually just does it. Like, that kind of seems like what Furia has relied on in NA. I
Yeah.
didn't see
They
that from them in majors and stuff like that. It felt more as time went on, Cam. Don't you feel like a team effort? But like this
definitely. I
weekend,
think
it
in
didn't
North
seem
America,
cohesive.
no, yeah, they need to incorporate card more into their offense when they're playing online. I just think, like you said, it's too much of just one player going up and doing everything. And Kaio has always been the one who's kind of just like gluing Card and Yon together to make sure things go smoothly. But Card's a
Yeah.
massive threat, and he has a lot of pop off potential. I just don't think he got to show it this week at all. And I don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
necessarily why. Maybe he wasn't challenging as much as he should. Maybe he was uncomfortable. Maybe he was just not playing his fastest game necessarily. Maybe this was like a feeler regional where they were just
I think
trying to
that's a
make
good way
sure
to
they
put
did
it.
good enough, but they weren't trying to either peak or fall off completely. Because you really just want to make sure for this regional you get top 8. Now you're auto invited back to the other regionals. You don't have
Yep.
to play close quals anymore. And if you mess up in close quals, there's a chance you don't even make the event at all. So the goal was probably just don't mess up, be top 8, worry about peaking later.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that pretty much is. You stole the words out of my mouth. I think Furia's not really super worried about this first regional. I think they're more focused on settling in. I hate to keep bringing it up, but moving is really difficult, and you guys do have to realize it was last second. A lot of these Furia landed here like a week before they were supposed to play quals. So expecting them to be in their same form as they were towards the end of a complete grind at their homes all year long, it's a bit unfair to put on them, especially entering a region with a bunch of new teams, with a bunch of players that are all in their region. They're competent. Furia is making a transition not only globally in terms of where they're playing, but also complete playstyle changes. Their teams that they don't play, they've never played half of these teams before. So I think that's a huge factor for them. And I think Furia, no, they did not make a mistake. They're going to kick ass this year. I think they're going to get better as time goes on. I'm totally biased because I love that team and I want them to do well. I think for Rocket League, it's huge. I am concerned about the playstyle, but I think that it'll change and they'll get better. I think their coach has a good head on his shoulders. All those players want to win. I know they're grinders. They wouldn't have moved here and explored the NA option if they weren't, right?
It's a massive challenge to undertake to
Yeah,
especially since you
insane.
already saw Complexity try it and struggle, really
Yes,
struggle after that first
exactly.
split to do that. So to say, okay, we'll give it a go. We'll walk this road, even though we've seen people fall off of it and stumble. Like we'll try it. Like that takes a lot.
And they hit the timing really good. I think this off season was the best time ever to make moves into Rocket League. So Furia moving to NA, I think it built on the hype. They have a huge fan base now. Jorby's doing really good streams. If you guys don't see their streams, you guys should check it out. They're adorable. And the team is also just. So yeah, shout out Furia. I thought, I thought that they underperformed for sure, but given all the circumstances, to make a top 8, I thought was a W. Raw.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's just really shaping the NA landscape to be hyper competitive. And it kind of makes me worried for a team that we haven't really talked about yet that I thought looked like a shadow of their former selves, version one. A team that made
yeah,
no changes and is walking into new rosters that are now super teams, like like FaZe and SSG, and then all these other outside region players coming in. V1 says we're not going to change anything. We got beast mode. We're good,
yeah,
but they weren't.
weren't good
They
this week. That's true.
struggled so much in their round one in top eight.
Yeah,
They could not maintain possession of the ball. They were the slower team every single time, and they couldn't even set up plays. It was like they couldn't even get the
it was a
ball to
struggle
beast
as a
mode
V1.
for more than 2 seconds. I don't know what was going on.
Yeah, yeah, it wasn't a good look for V1 this week. They limped in, as you guys can see. They limped into with Furia into the top 8. They weren't
Yeah, like
coming
look at
in
that
strong.
accelerate soul PK.
Yeah, they also got handed arguably a really easy schedule. Playing Axel, yeah, take away FaZe. Um, Shopify is tough. Not gonna write that team off anymore.
Yeah, they're on the come up.
I had been writing them off. Because I did not realize how reinvigorated they would look with following that roster replacement. We can talk about them in a little bit. But for the version 1 roster, you have to be concerned if you're a V1 fan. This is the most important regional to date. You make no roster changes. You don't move countries. You have the same roster all off season. This should be a big advantage for teams coming in. I think if you remain a roster throughout the entirety of the off season, you go to Worlds, all that stuff. There's no stress on your players. You're completely comfortable. That should be a good factor heading in. And they kind of
Do
just
you
bottomed
think
out this weekend.
V1 after this split are going to be at threat to make a roster move if this keeps up?
Ooh, hard to say. Like if you play like that, I think
Like
you have
if
to
that's
think
for three
about it.
regionals in a row, it's gonna
Yeah,
creep
you have to
in.
think about but it's not because of the players. I think all 3 of those players are talented and are top 8 players. Okay, so I'm not calling for anyone specific moved, but with how quickly and how snowbally the season is, Cam, you have to think about these things fast because you can't afford to take a split or even a regional off. You can mess up one regional, maybe. So top 8 for top top 8 for version 1 isn't drastically
Yeah,
terrible. Like
and it depends on who's
it could have been a
available
lot
too.
worse. It could have been a lot worse. But you also can't wait. And with the roster spots, I mean the limited major spots, FaZe already taking 1. You're on the outside looking in right now. So the teams in right now are Shopify, FaZe, Gen G, Space Station, G2. Did I even say FaZe? I think I did in there.
Yeah, you
So
got him.
that's 5. Shopify are contending with you now. Optic are going to contend with you now. Furia. All these teams now that are teams with upside potential, all are going to be contending with you because of how poorly you finished in the first region. And
Yeah.
for V1, making majors, I think, is the reason they did not make a change last season, right? So if you're going into the season as a V1 fan, you don't make a change, don't make regional one, or you don't make the first major, I think you do have to start.
Yeah, you have to think about it, but then you look at all the options. All
Karma's a
these
free agent. I mean,
Yeah, so
Karma's out
same
there.
here, honestly.
She's real
Like
wanted.
beast mode. Come on, we're right here. Let's go. V1 squad.
But it's like, I don't want them to make a change. That's a roster that I have a lot of heartstrings to. And I admire how they came up organizationally and as players. V1 was not a major org last year, but they did awesome viewing parties. They've supported their players really well. They've signed great content. As an org, I want them to do well, not to mention all the people involved in the org. And I'll always cheer for Tormy, of course. But like, for version 1, you just gotta wonder where the issue lies, because I thought Torment played well.
Yeah, there needs to be like some serious
And I
VOD
feel like
review
he's gonna be the
for the
one that's
V1
pointed
game.
the finger at. Because it always is the
Really, a
support
Torment?
player. I feel like everyone always points at the support player. And it just bothers me. So you better not be pointing your
I
finger at Torment, chat. I
No,
thought he
definitely
did
not.
well this weekend. I thought Torment
No,
did well.
if you watch Torment, if you watch the replays, Torment did about everything he could, especially when he was on the ball. And I think when he was actually on the ball, he was making correct plays to the point where I was going, can that just be beast mode in Torment's place? Like Torment was doing everything that beast mode needed to be doing. But the thing is, like, Torment's got the perfect play. I'm like, how is Torment in this position? But then he can't do the double flip reset. Like there was one play where he did
Yeah, that's
everything
the
right.
thing.
He got a free ball and he tried to do a double flip reset, but he couldn't. And in my head, I'm like, well, beast mode would hit that. But you have to take that a step further and go, why isn't beast mode in that position? Why isn't beast mode getting the ball? And I'm looking at beast mode and calm for just not controlling the play properly. V1 are a team that you saw this a lot last season. They will just panic, boom the ball, panic, pinch the ball. Beast mode will just launch the ball to the other team's backboard when he wants time to go get boost, when he needs space to breathe. It just does not work right now. It did not work all of Swiss. It did not work, especially against Gen G. It was just a giveaway of possession every single time. I think like the one goal V1 got that looked any good was Calm's full field pinch. And it's just because they
That
were
was clean.
panicking and he didn't even need to pinch it. Like he could have just controlled the ball, taken it up the wall. No one was challenging him. And Gen G just had a lapse in rotation. It looked nice. And
Good
it
play.
it was a good
Fair.
play, but the reason he went for it was incorrect. It was actually just very poor decision
That's NA
making
play
that
style.
worked out. Yeah.
That's
I
NA
looked
in a
at it,
nutshell.
I went, that's the wrong play. You shouldn't have scored from that, even though it worked out. Like it was, I honestly think it was the wrong play, and I think V1 are playing their defense completely backwards.
Okay, that's interesting. I didn't get to watch the V1 series as intended. I want. So I will admit that for me, playstyle discussion is difficult. I'm gonna watch the replays tonight. But
I'm a total nerd for RLCS. I like watch everything. I can't help it.
yeah,
Just
I
reminds me
was
of the
able
good
to
old
watch
days, you
like
know?
yeah, no, I really wanted to watch V1. I think I had something person that made me miss most for V1 and one of the space station. But I watch everything else. But yeah, V1, what I'm gonna throw an idea out there. Say NRG continue to be struggling, and the mentality on NRG gets worse, and Justin becomes available.
Yeah, you
Is there
wonder, you
any
know?
team in the top 8 right now that should and would take Justin instantly if he became available, or Garrett or Squishy? Any of NRG becomes available. I'm saying Justin because I think Justin, um, for lack of a better word, is still ridiculous and is insane. And I don't know, I don't know where the hate's coming from. I see chat right now, people saying stuff about Justin. I mean, I just think it's silly. I think Justin looks incredible as he always has. Not as dominant as we're used to seeing Justin Cam, of course. Because
Yeah, I
in
think that just
2019, he
comes
was
down
like
to
5 metas ahead. Okay.
yeah, but
So
energy as a team have just been struggling, and that's more of a team dynamic thing than an individual skill issue, in my opinion. I think if
right.
Garrett and Justin were suddenly available tomorrow, teams
Who
would have to
takes him?
seriously consider who grabs them because you can't just leave them out there. Like they will perform regardless of who you put around them. The question is, like, which
So
teams are
what
going to be
top 8
best
team would pick
built
him
for
up?
them.
So would G2 pick him up? No.
I think G2 would look great with Garrett, but I don't know who to. That's the other thing. Now that the scene is so good, I don't know who to take off of these teams. Who would be better? You know, I think
That's the
I
thing. I
think
don't think
Garrett looks
G2
great on
moves anyone.
G2. I think Justin looks great on Space Station.
I'll
You know,
tell
or
you.
V1.
So if Justin becomes available, I'm gonna go down the list of top 8 teams. You tell me. We'll answer yes or no. If Justin becomes available, should they make a move? Okay. G2. If Justin's available, do they take him?
No, I don't think Justin's the right fit for that. You have Kago, Atomic. It's too much. You need
Space
somebody
Station
back.
answers itself.
Yes.
What?
I think you could change him out for LJ or Arsenal. Daniel and Justin
What?
combined is stupid good. Are you kidding me? You know, you don't get to touch the
You'd pick
ball.
up LJ and then kick LJ and pick up
Yeah, well,
Justin?
this is a hypothetical. It's Justin
Welcome
we're
to the
talking
team,
about.
LJ. Actually, on second
Or
thought.
I said or
On
Arsenal,
second
you know?
thought.
Arsenal could be out too. You never know.
Can you make changes like that, though?
I don't know.
I don't see Space Station doing that. Realistically.
No, definitely not.
Genji, I don't see. FaZe, no. Shopify, if Justin's available on your Shopify, you have to consider that, right? I don't
Yeah, but
care
does
how
Justin
well you
even
just
want
did.
to play there? Is it's like
I mean,
what
they're
would be
a top 8
memory
team.
2-piece Justin?
You're going from a
Is that
non-top
enough
8 team
offense?
to a top 8 team.
I think the reason Shopify are a top 8 team is those 3 players have been playing together long enough to build some synergy, and that is more of a
So that's a
team
no, then.
effort than it is an individual effort.
Okay, so you think no for Justin?
I don't think Justin should go to Shopify for both
V1.
of their sakes. Yes.
V1 with Shopify. Okay. So you think that's an auto yes? If Justin's like, yo, V1, I want to come join you, they say yo.
Justin, beast mode, any third. Yes, that sounds
You're
great
dodging
to me.
the question. Eddie 30 says. Okay. I see you, Cam. Alright. I mean, I agree. I think if Justin became available, or Garrett or Squishy, I think V1 has to take, if they continue to struggle. That's a big asterisk, if they continue to struggle. I think the team dynamic on V1 obviously is great. They seem
Yeah, they
like
have
they
a
all
very
love each other, and
strong bond,
Fireburner's a
lots of
great
trust.
coach. The org likes
Yeah.
them. I think they have a good thing going. And for
They
V1
still made
fans,
top 8, you know?
I would not panic. You can have off regionals. I would not call for a roster change. But if we do go down the line and we do play hypothetical because we are a show, in the event that it continues to tank and Justin does become available, I think you have to do it. You have to. For V1. And I'm not gonna name who you should replace, because it gets into a whole thing. It
Dodging the
gets into a whole
question.
thing. Well, because, if V1 continued to tank, did someone on their team make a move? Top player.
Like beast mode leaves
Yeah,
outright?
and then Justin goes to V1, and down the line, it causes a whole bunch of things.
Energy V1 trade.
But if everything stays the same and Justin became available, I think V1 should be the number 1 team. Because they're a team that has shown a top 4 ceiling, with a floor of 8. And Justin needs that floor of 8 with a ceiling.
Yeah, I think V1 having a floor of 8 is a great way to put it, honestly, because they absolutely showed their floor this weekend.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
It's still a top 8 finish. They still are guaranteed to be in all the other regionals now. So
no, yeah,
that's pretty good.
For V1, I'm not worried. I don't think they should make a roster move. I don't think they will. I think they'll right the ship. I think they'll be right in there. I think they just struggled this weekend, which there's a lot to change and a lot to adjust to.
Yeah, the landscape's so much different this time.
Shopify playing well. V1 getting shocked by that. I think that's a good for them. Them going to Game 5 with FaZe was impressive, even though they lost. I think that's still very good. But, it is worse than what we're used to seeing. They were World Championship winners for me 6 months ago, into only being top 8 now, which is a drastic change. It is the offseason. It is only the first regional, but listen, this is all we have to go off of, okay? This is all I have to go off of, is the offseason, the moves, and this. And V1 right now are not in the spot they thought they'd be.
Yeah, we're really picking apart the bare bones speculations that we can
that's
make
what we're supposed to,
right now. Yeah,
we're supposed to have fun with it.
We're taking it as far as we possibly can.
And just to, I think towards the end here, wrap things up a bit. Just quickly touch on Optic. We talked about a little bit, maybe NRG and complexity. I know, or any other surprises from the Swiss for you. Going back to Friday, PK for me was eye-opening. I realized that they only beat Optic, basically, to set up their run, but they got the gauntlet. They got G2, NRG, Optic, V1, and Soul, Soul, to me, is a very underrated roster. Knight, in my opinion, is a top 10 player in NA, or close.
Well, yeah, he's part of that random squad that used to play Astro tournaments. Chronic and 2-piece are now on top 8 teams. He's the last missing piece.
And I think he was the best on the team.
Yeah, but he's good.
Maybe my judgment is way off, or maybe Chronic isn't, or maybe Knight isn't as social as his friends, because a lot of the roster moves are dynamic. But I do think that Seoul team is extremely talented. So, Knights beating Optic and Seoul, I was really happy for them because Sosa is a player who's been around for a while. That Knights roster, I know that they've been going through it a bit. They've been struggling to put up results. And, this is a big building block for them to come out in Regional 1, put up a name, put up results. That's great for them moving forward. Are they legit? I don't know. I like to think Cheese is legit. I like to think Sosa's legit. Their third is ZPS, which felt a bit like a crutch move to me because it is someone that Sosa had previously with Alpha Cap and ZPS a while ago. So you're going back kind of to that familiarity. But it worked. They put up results, and it has them feeling comfortable. So I think that's great. But the main topic of NRG Cam, I'm concerned. Majorly concerned. For NRG.
I mean, Dr. Bowmaster and Chai is saying it's a silly combo to have. It's possible for Complexity Energy to get top 4 next regional. I just don't see Energy getting top 4 next regional. It's definitely not entirely possible. The last time we saw Energy top 4 anything was like 2021.
I think Energy top 4 is possible, but I am so biased.
I think possible, but probable, no. They have so
not.
much. They have so much ground to cover.
I don't think top 8's out of the question, and then they take a series. I mean, I could see that.
I think top 8 is a good goal for them to have, and
they're one game away.
The thing is, if they make it to semifinals and just get smoked 4-0, like, okay, yeah, you're top 4, but really just about any other team from quarterfinals could go to a semi and get destroyed,
Sure, but it's progress, right? And for
it is progress. It still counts for points too.
Yeah, and for the mental energy, they're in a bit of a spot that I was in with CLT, where like you win, and then you hit this, at least in the rival series, right? You hit this kind of like ceiling where like, oh, you start to get dunked on a bit when you play in promos and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. It can expectations are just high for them too.
Time. Yeah, and when you're the dominant team, it's real hard to go from dominant to not even in the conversation. It's a big mental hit, and I know that the players, of course, want to win. And there's something to be said about them being the most popular team in Rocket League, I think. There's a lot there. And it's a lot to digest and like pick apart. But for Energy, I think a top 8 would be a huge start for them. And having them be one game away was kind of crushing. It never felt like they had that Furia series. It felt like what they were mustering together was like great goals, don't get me wrong, but almost like they needed to do that in order to just have a chance.
Yeah, like Garrett's crazy double touch to tie the game on Furia was just so peak. But
yeah, it was
like
great.
That's what they had to do to win.
Yeah, they were playing great. And it still wasn't enough. And it just like it felt like they were outpaced in that Furia match. And I just felt for them a bit, being so close. It's almost worse, You had the game 5 Swiss match 5 in overtime against Furia, who's a scary team. But then you look at the NRG did slip up. That game 5 loss to Dig changed their whole region. I think that one loss could have flipped the entire thing. We talked about it last week on the show, how Swiss matchups number 1 for teams that are question marks, which NRG and Dig are, in my opinion, for this regional. They were not a solid number. They weren't top 8, whatever. It was a question mark match. They ended up losing in game 5, and that just shaped their bracket. To their defense, I mean, not really their defense, they got 3 matchups they should win in a row. Lost one of them. And then ended up not making it against the other 2 top 8 teams, which is
with
more
the benefit of hindsight, the Gen G 3-0 it makes a bit more sense now. But I think in the moment on the day, everyone's like, "What? How are you getting swept by Gen G?" But
it's more.
Gen G just know the right way to play.
More the fact that they got Furia, PK, Rogue, and Dig in their 5 out of 4, and still
won 2 of those. Yeah,
and still didn't.
Because they definitely, it's good that they won the Rogue game, because Rogue has stolen wins on Energy sometimes, and Rogue had a very difficult Swiss, another team that didn't change their roster, but they picked up 2 games out of 9.
Yeah.
So they had a rough time. So that they 100% Energy should have been winning that. And then they had 2 3-0s in a row. You know, it was looking fine. Oh, Energy are 2-1. They'll make it in no problem. And they just can't get across the finish line.
Yeah, and that was what they struggled with to make major as well. Was Cole in game 5, they lost, and the same thing happened to Furia game 5, where you know, for Energy fans, you should be concerned for sure. I think it's valid, but I wouldn't, you know,
Well, they're not out
as
yet.
they had
Energy
an
still have.
NRG stand. They were only 1 game away. 2
Mhm.
games actually. The game 5 from Dig, I think, completely swings their bracket. I think that's the reason they got the matchups they did towards the end, which is why you need to win that first one. Teams who lose the first match, apparently other than Gen G, really struggle. But look at the teams that win the first match. It's way more like, I just feel like the odds when you win the first one compared to the last one tremendously in your favor in that first matchup. And yeah, I just think NRG. I still believe in NRG. I thought that they looked good at certain points, struggled with other points. Getting Furia in round 5 is
Yeah.
a big that sucks. When I saw that matchup, I was like, oh, not again, man. Furia versus NRG, my 2 favorite teams.
Yeah, because it very well could have been Optic, you know?
Yep, it
Or
could have been
V1.
Optic, could have been V1. Could have been any of them.
Or Complexity, or Knights. You know, V1 pulled Knights and Energy
Couldn't
pulled
be
Furia.
Knights. Energy played Knights round 3,
Oh, you're right. They played them round
why
3.
the first round matchup matters, because then
Mhm.
you play the hard teams through 2, 3, 4, and then if you're a good team, right, and you get to 5 after winning the first one, usually you get not a layup match. I don't want to use the word like layup as in 3, but you definitely get a favored match in round 5 if you win that.
Right.
And they did not. I think Furia is a big struggle to anyone. Yes, they weren't. They only finished 8th. However, I think that no one wants to play Furia. Who cares?
Yeah.
No one.
That's
wants
a
to play Furia.
qual.
And the Gen G loss doesn't look that bad either. It's more that Dignitas one. So, you know, NRG, when you look back at it, they were only a game away from being where I wanted them to be. So, in that regards, I think that they did pretty good this region. Not great. Now that we have hindsight, because at the time I was scared. Now that we have hindsight, it looks a lot better optically than that 9th place. So
I think that Energy, and do you agree or not, that they look better now than they did near the end of last season? Like this off season, they have improved and are heading the right direction. Yes or no? Or
I'd say no.
they still stuck?
Yeah, I think they're still stuck. It's not terms of individual skill, it's more play style. I didn't see a dramatic change in what they were trying to do. Individually, they all looked great. I just the energy playstyle that dominated for so many years doesn't work anymore. Which is like
I agree
this
with that.
midfield control into a passing play or into a double touch. Energy was so good at counterattacking and then controlling on offense when they had the chance through the midfield. And they'd always they'd either get a ball to float up and then they'd hit a double or do some crazy play off of it or a passing play. And I don't think that it works anymore. I think you need to be able to individually control the ball, beat people individually multiple times, and then drop it into like a scoring position. Whereas NRG, what they do is they manipulate the ball into somewhat of a scoring position, and then they used to be so good at double touching or shooting or passing that it would just be bang in. Nowadays, things are getting covered for them, and they try and do these extra passes and think that, like, I'm not in the position to score this, so I can make a touch and beat someone for an extra pass, but it's not open anymore. Like, yeah, you get the extra pass, but it's defended. It's not like it used to be where it's free. You know what I mean? It's hard to talk about without replays, but it just seems like they're trying to change stuff, and they realize that it's changing. They're just not there yet, and I do think they'll get there. They're just not there right now.
Gears are turning slowly, I think. And
yes.
next regional, I expect them to do a little bit better, and I think push into that top 8.
I would be surprised if they were outside the top 8 again next week.
Well, that's when the conversation, the murmurs start to turn into talks. You know,
Yeah, exactly.
that's where you get worried because you're 2/3 of the way into the season, and energy's outside the top 8 twice, and you need top 5s to go to majors. Then it's energy not at the major again.
Yeah,
It's a
and it's
dangerous
also the
snowball.
story.
Hmm.
The story follows them. It's been since January. So now, instead of looking at it, you can look at it from the season, but then if you look at it from a month standpoint, this is month 10 now in a row where they have not looked um, at their standard, which falls on the players to, are they comfortable with that? Are they okay not making a major and gutting it out and stuff like that? Is the org okay with not making all those things start to come into question if they finish outside the top 8 again. Because statistically, Cam, I don't know if it's true or not, but outside the top 8, 2 regionals in a row, you're not making it. Unless you win, maybe. But you're
Yeah, you
pretty
need a
much out.
miracle at that point. Yeah,
It's pretty much regional winners plus good performers or like
a consistent
semifinalists.
you
Yeah,
you
that's
have to at
it.
least always be making top 8, and then you need that like top 4 or like top 2 push to sneak in.
It's semifinalists plus winners.
Right.
And no. Both Energy and Cole, who I had maybe sneaking in the top 8 out this week. I could see
Yeah.
them flip-flopping with some teams. Like I said, I think you could have flip-flopped Optic and Complexity this week.
Yeah,
I
I can
thought
see
that
that.
Optic got somewhat of an easy schedule, I will say. They also flubbed their first match, but ended up bringing it back. Which again, I count as a caveat. I don't think they should have won that series. I think they'd tell you that they shouldn't have won that series, but that doesn't matter at the end of the day. They did put it up. So
Well, yeah, now they don't have to go back through close calls. Energy, complexity, I think they'll be fine in close
yeah,
calls. We'll definitely see them again.
and they're good seeds
Um,
too, which is
yeah.
huge.
So they should be okay. But
Shout out Accelerate. Well,
yeah, I mean they are always so close, you know? They've been around
yeah,
forever.
Gimmick Toasty and Ajax, I believe.
Yeah, the roster's like so different
Yeah,
now than the one that played all last year, but the org itself has been around for a while now. It's kind of becoming like a consistent name here in these regionals.
yeah. Accelerate. I thought proving the doubters wrong, being there, and I was really happy for Gimmick and Toasty having done their games last year. I think they're a talented squad. I had a lot of question marks around Ajax. That was like a really interesting pickup with
It's like a comeback almost, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. So I was happy for Ajax there, and to see them perform was great. Dig and Soul as well. Three
I think we'll
surprising
see Soul
teams.
again.
Yeah, I think you'll see Soul as well. I I worry for the teams in the close calls because of how well all the teams from the close call did. That like the teams who didn't make it, I think now we're gonna have tough matchups because of the experience and how well the seeding went for all the close call teams. So LG, I'm surprised. 03. I mean, surprised but not really. Thought that something changed with that roster with Alraz and Kinsey. Because typically, when a roster like that makes this, they go 03. But they had shown really well, like promises and stuff. Ended up not flubbing out a bit this weekend. They had 2 tough matchups, Optic and G2, but that's going to be expected when you're a lower team. Rogue is concerning. After they did
Yeah.
so well in the close call, which surprised everybody, to come out and blank is, I'm sure, equally as frustrating.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I think Rogue not making a change really, I think, hurt them a little bit. I do think that roster still doesn't quite know how to do everything correctly together. It's like they have half of the pieces. I just don't think those 3 players together are like the answer for Rogue to be like a super top team. And I don't really have any solutions for them either. Just when I watch them, sometimes everything magically works out, and other times nothing works out, and it just looks weird and clunky. And I think it's what leads to them maybe popping off in close calls and then being 16th here in Swiss.
Well, what's scary to me is that Rogue with the number 16 next to it. That is almost double what they were last year. They were about 7th, 8th seed in NA
Yeah, they
last
were on the
year,
cusp.
and now they're 16.
Rogue has become a
That
bubble
is
team. Oh no.
that is an RLCS team to bottom of the bubble seed.
Well, this is what we talked
Um,
about a few shows
or
ago. Was
the
that
top of the bubble seed. I don't know how to
these like
phrase
top
that.
8 teams are going to become bubble teams to make room for all these new rosters that are vying for top 4.
Yeah. There's so many. I mean, we can do a whole show. We could do a whole show on the bubble scene, like by itself. There's so many things to talk about the bubble scene. It
We
doesn't
might
get
need
enough
to
coverage.
after the EU episode, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, for sure. It doesn't get enough coverage. But yeah, I thought to wrap up for NA this week, I thought NA great first regional, great start for RLCS. I was concerned about the viewer numbers. Close
Viewership looked good
qualifiers
though.
seem to had more viewers than the main event. In terms of like critical streaming it, optic streaming it, Solary streaming. I mean that's European, but Solary had like 30K viewers on theirs. RCS
Really?
itself only had like 50,000. The finals, I think even it pushed 6. I'm not a big
Yeah,
numbers
but
person, but
the Rocket League category as a whole seemed to have a lot of people in it.
it did. It did. The close qual was a huge day. I was a bit surprised with NA finals with all the hype going on this year that it wasn't here. Which I'm not a numbers person, but it was just something I noticed. I'd throw that. So yeah. As we end, Cam, you did have a question you wanted to ask in the show towards the end about the majors. You
Oh,
wanna talk
I
about that real
mean,
quick before we end?
I was going to ask with FaZe doing so well, and obviously everyone's going to jump on the FaZe hype train. I'm not sold, so I wanted to ask you: is who's going to be the best performing team if you had to go off of Justice Regional, right? And
Yeah.
maybe not necessarily Justice Regional, but how you feel right now. Which North American team will be the best performer at the major in Rotterdam later this year? Will it still be FaZe? Will G2 wake up?
Hard not to say FaZe after that. That was
Will Furia
dominant.
qualify and then dominate? They'll be an NA team
Yeah, I
now.
want to say Furia. I do
Furia will
want
be
to
the
say
best
Furia.
performing NA team in Rotterdam.
I think so.
I think it'll be SSG personally.
So in Rotterdam, no. Yeah, I think Space Station's a good pick. I think I'm gonna stick with FaZe. I think Miss is the answer. Not gonna lie, I'm phasing up.
On the FaZe train,
I
you
still don't
phase
know how
up.
to do it, but I'm
Give us your
phasing
best
up.
phase up for clippable phase up. Let's
That's a
go.
phase. That's a phase up.
That's good. Yeah, that's
I'm
good.
phased up. I think Miss is the answer. I think they're doing great. I like what I see. The big concern for me for FaZe was always NRG. NRG was their daddy. Anytime they met them in semis, it was like NRG, Big Daddy's here, you lose.
The belt is coming off.
Yeah, exactly. And now NRG, they could get there. I just think that FaZe is a different end. First killer looks unlocked. Typical looks comfortable. Very scary. I've never seen Typical look comfortable. SRG dominated. I mean, SSG dominated years ago, and in early RLCSX when they just won everything. That was when the last time I saw Typical. And then Mist hasn't been on this god tier of a roster since the Envy Machine. I feel like
Yep.
all of these players in their old dominant fashion are kind of just coming together as like a cohesive unit. Seems to work. So now that I have the regional champ to back me up, I'm like, okay, yeah, phase up. Phase all the way.
Yeah, we'll see if they
How
continue
about you?
to perform like this throughout the season. You know, that's the test they have to go through. I'm not really going to be a believer of any team until I see more. Although I'm starting to really enjoy watching Gen G play. So
Okay.
I might be developing a soft spot for Gen G doing well. We'll see. We'll see as the season goes on.
All right. Yeah, I don't know. I don't wanna tear Gen G down. I think
Then don't.
I
Just
think they
don't.
did
Just let me
great.
have this.
I just wonder, was it an overperformance a little bit this weekend?
No.
An overperformance.
I think they could have performed even better. They didn't even show all of their potential.
They definitely could have. That finals was a bit of a. They got their ass kicked a little bit in the finals.
I think they got more in the tank.
They kind of got brought it to them there, but it's like I said, they're new. They're going to improve. They're going to be great. Um, I think I'm on the phase train. I'd be surprised if they went back to being not. But yeah, I think that's gonna be our NA recap for today. We will have an EU RLCS show next week after
Yeah.
the EU broadcast, which will be exciting because we have the closed quals today. Real quick, let me take a look at.
It was very interesting today. Not to go too hard into it, but you're gonna have to
I'll
change
pull up the bracket.
some of your fantasy stuff may need to get shifted around here
Oh
because
no!
Vitality did not make it out of closed quals.
Oh no! No vitality. Okay.
No Vitality, no SK. SK is where Scrub went to go play.
All right, let's take a look. Here are the closed qualifier results, guys, for Europe, real quick. Just because that did happen earlier today. So some big L's you said were Vitality.
Yeah, Vitality lost to Sonics in the final round 3-0.
And Sonic's roster being Tho, Mike Boy, and Metza. Let's
And
go, Metza!
Metza. Yeah.
Yes! Right, hell yeah. Alright, that's a big dub. Shout out Sonics as well. You said
I thought SK Gaming would do better.
SK Scrubs team.
That's Scrub,
Nas and Rixie.
Nas. Yeah, they're maybe they just had an off day. They're both. I know that their roster has a ton of potential, but seeing them 0-3 is weird, very weird. But other than that, I mean, I think it pretty much went about the way it should with like Top Bloke, Solary. It's glad to see Solary do well.
Solary is the goats, the French
Williams
goats.
Resolve and Endpoint. I'm not surprised doing well.
Yeah, Williams Resolve Oxygen played this week. Flame, Noah, Sky, and Breezy. They're very good.
Yeah, that team's great.
Very good team.
But they will get to catch up with everybody who's in the main event, like Oxygen, Moist, G1, BDS, Carmine.
I'm saying it right now. Oxygen are the best team. The way, with current form, the way Oxygen played, if they play like that again, they're world champions. I'm just gonna say now, it was unreal. I casted their games this week. It was crazy, chat. It was actually crazy. I am all oxygened up. Getting a jersey.
You are instead of inhaling copium, you're just inhaling oxygen.
Yeah, just straight oxygen out of the OT tank. It was so weird to watch because it was like they played like we wanted Splice to play. They were passing everywhere all the time, mechanical stuff. I'm not kidding, Kim. You should watch the game. It was wild, and they didn't just 3-0. They clipped every single goal they scored was a clip. Every single one you could highlight and put in a montage. It was crazy. They looked insane.
I'll have to do my research.
The Moist storyline. You have Liquid, Carmine, BDS in 5th. I mean, there's so many things going on in Europe. It's gonna be a fun week. Talking about.
There will be a lot to talk about next week for Europe for sure. I'm very excited for all of these new matchups.
Yeah, EU RLCS is going to be exciting, especially with Oxygen leading the helm. Because not to be toxic to Europe, it was kind of boring to watch sometimes, their gameplay. Oxygen's not boring to watch. Oxygen is really, really fun. And I think that you guys are going to see a lot of elements that NA has with Oxygen. Lots of
Oxygen
lots of
BDS
passing.
final.
Yeah, and the whole thing is can Oxygen remain stellar throughout the whole year with Jorius, Archie. Like they do have playtime problems. They do have like hours in the game. So like yes, they're gonna be dominant now because they're playing time. But man, they look insane. I think Europe is in general looks really exciting this year with the transfers that took some talent out of the region. I still think that the depth Europe has is great. It should be really fun. And we're gonna be doing that after RLCS broadcast next week. So our shows, guys, are gonna start to be after RLCS broadcasts. The games are over. We'll start our stream up and then we'll do our post game from there on. Currently, that's the only plan we have right now for the shows. If that changes, we'll let you know, but that's just the plan moving forward. And yeah, Cam, any final thoughts here before we wrap up our NA show?
Um, I mean, I think NA was it was a good week of Rocket League. I think the gameplay was very top tier, and the region is going about how we would expect it so far, with a few shakeups here and there. But I think Europe's gonna it's gonna be the Wild West over there, and so I'm
Yeah.
actually super excited for next week's show. And I really, because I don't know a whole lot about Europe either. So I know a lot about NA, and my biases are very strong
Oh
over
yeah.
there. But in Europe, I get a fresh set of eyes on everybody, so I can be a lot more, I guess, objective about it while I'm watching live, and I think that makes it really fun. So I'm really excited for next week's show.
Yeah, and we're gonna get a European homie on here to help us not be as biased to any.
Yeah, balance this out.
Yeah, we'll try and get that for you guys. But until then, thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you had fun. We'll be back next week, and until then, we'll talk to you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.